Exposed. The incredible moment when an apparently poor man revealed he owned the company. As Charlie's mop slid across the office floor, bright flashes of newsfeed alerts buzzed in his mind, headlines about the tech startup's uncertain fate, his boss Greg's reckless decisions making waves. Each stroke of the mop felt heavier than the last, echoing the mounting pressure in his chest. It was just another day at a company where he was seen as merely a janitor, yet Charlie held a truth that could shatter their perception of him. As whispers about layoffs circled, he grappled daily with a secret that could upend his world and redefine everyone around him. Watching the interns rally on coffee breaks, seeking his wisdom, filled him with honor, but the contrast was brutal. His jeans were frayed, shoes scuffed, and their clean attire reminded him of how far removed he was from the world of wealth and power. Yet it was more than that. He felt an innate responsibility to protect them from something looming. The weight of his family's business legacy, which he had silently inherited after its demise, pressed down heavier than the mop bucket he carried. Could he afford to expose himself as their savior? Moments of doubt crashed against one another in his mind. What if they turned their backs on him? He was nothing but the janitor, a symbol of struggle in their eyes. The mere thought of revealing his identity churned unease in his stomach. Could he risk the elite's judgment, especially Greg's? Charlie knew Greg scoffed at those like him, believing wealth and position defined worth. So, should he remain a shadow, or step into the light where he belonged? As the day wore on, the office buzzed with anxiety. New emails from Greg about more cutbacks flooded the screen. Charlie's mind raced. Would his friends become collateral damage to their boss's reckless behavior? Each face he saw made his heart tighten. There was Jessica, the intern who believed in her software concept so fervently, and Marcus, who had finally found a workplace culture he loved. They were counting on him for reassurance, for redemption. But deep within, doubts whispered a relentless refrain. You won't be enough? You never were. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. In a fateful moment, Charlie stumbled upon Greg's latest decision, a poorly calculated investment threatening their very existence. The realization crashed down like a wave, pulling him into a whirlpool of fear and determination. Blood raced through his veins, every instinct urging him to keep his secret buried, to cling to the safety of anonymity. But as he locked eyes with his coworkers, despair reflected back at him. He couldn't abandon them. No more hiding. He had to confront Greg, walk back to the mop and bucket, or step forward to reveal the truth. As he stood, a ball of dread twisting his gut, every nerve ending crackled with energy. The room soared with tension, colleagues halted mid-conversation, and the world narrowed to this singular moment. Would he claim his identity and risk it all for everyone else? Would they accept a janitor as a leader? The next breath felt like a tipping point, his resolve trembling and yet brimming with adrenaline. He stepped forward, crossing the threshold into the unknown, ready to expose the truth that could reshape everything or shatter him utterly. Charlie felt the weight of his pounding heart echo in the silence of the office as he advanced. Time warped around him. Each footstep felt monumental, reverberating with the dual forces of fear and hope. With the eyes of his coworkers upon him, he realized this was not just a confrontation with Greg, but an unearthing of everything he had tried to keep buried. Steeling himself, he rehearsed the words in his mind. I'm not just the janitor. He craved clarity, but doubt gnawed at him, tugging him back to shadows he had grown accustomed to. He caught a glimpse of Jessica, her eyes wide with uncertainty, and Marcus, whose hopeful expression now dampened into something resembling concern. Would they truly understand? Could they even accept him as more than the person who swept the floors? The boardroom door loomed before him, its polished surface gleamed under fluorescent lights, a stark contrast to his scuffed shoes. He reached for the handle as if it were the lifeline he desperately needed. Gathering all his courage, he swung it open, plunging into the frigid atmosphere of power and arrogance. Greg, he said, voice steadying into a low rumble. "We need to talk." His boss, slouched over spreadsheets, looked up, brow knit together in irritation. "Charlie, what are you doing here?" The dismissive tone hit like a slap. Charlie flinched but pressed on. "I know about the investment. It's disastrous." He stood, feeling more exposed than ever. "You're risking everything, and the team deserves to know." Greg scoffed, the kind of laugh that cut through Charlie's resolve. "And who are you to lecture me? You clean the floors. You're not part of the decision-making process. Maybe you should listen to me." Charlie shot back, heart racing. "I may not fit your idea of what matters, but that doesn't mean I don't understand this business." He could feel a crack forming in the armor that had shielded him from this world, his voice wrapping around determination rather than fear. "Understanding doesn't equal competence, Charlie. Go back to your mop before you embarrass yourself further." Greg glared as if trying to squeeze him back into submission, but something shifted within Charlie. He envisioned Jessica and Marcus, their potential eroding under Greg's reckless management. If he stepped back now, he wouldn't just lose his chance. He would forsake those who believed in him. It was a turning point, an awakening that surged with purpose. "Perhaps I'm not just the janitor," he asserted, each word punctuating his resolve. "You don't know what I've accomplished, where I came from." Greg crossed his arms, a skeptical smirk hovering at the corner of his lips. "You think you can just come in here, and I built a company from the ground up before it all fell apart. I'm not just a janitor. I inherited a legacy. You're leading us to ruin, and I can help stop it," he declared, voice rising with conviction, each sentence becoming a lifeline he tossed into the turbulent waters of Greg's dismissive arrogance. Silence filled the room, the gravity of the truth hanging between them like a shimmering thread. Charlie's pulse hammered in his ears, a surge of adrenaline washed over him. Would Greg dismiss this, or was there an ounce of curiosity lurking behind his disdain? As the tension escalated, Charlie questioned if he had finally breached the fortress of indifference, unearthing the potential for change. And then, the unexpected. Greg leaned back in his chair, the smirk faltering, eyes narrowing as if weighing the implications of Charlie's revelation. "Your family's legacy?" Greg challenged, tone shifting from arrogance to a hint of intrigue. "Let us hear it." The stakes soared as Charlie prepared to unravel the truth, not just about his past, but a strategy that could avert disaster. He steadied his breath, ready to claim the moment that could alter everything: his identity, his future, and the direction of the company. This was a convergence of his hidden talents, waiting to be unleashed. As he began to outline his vision, he saw a flicker of something inscrutable in Greg's eyes. Would it be skepticism, or a flicker of respect? Would this discussion lead to a new beginning, or deepen the rift? Only time would reveal the true weight of his words and resolve. Charlie had stepped into the light, but would it illuminate a path forward or cast shadows of doubt? Charlie took a deep breath, words bubbling to the surface like a long-buried tide, flowing with possibilities. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing against him. This was no ordinary pitch. It was a chance to redefine every aspect of who he was in the eyes of his adversary and his colleagues. "Before I became what you see today, I was known in another light. A less disheveled one," he began, his voice firm but tinged with the resolve of vulnerability. "My family owned a successful chain of restaurants, but after a series of unfortunate events, bad investments, financial ruin, it all collapsed. What you see is a shadow of what I once had." Greg's eyebrows lifted, skepticism dripping from his posture. "And you think that qualifies you to reorganize my approach to business?" The condescension was palpable, but Charlie pressed on, tapping into the adrenaline flowing through his veins. "In every failure, there's an opportunity. I learned the intricacies of balancing accounts and managing people." He gestured toward the conference table, cluttered with reports that had been poorly conceived. "I see miscalculations here that could be fixed. I'm not asking for the place at the table for personal gain, but to spare our team from similar doom. They deserve better." A fleeting moment of doubt passed through Charlie as he glanced back to Jessica and Marcus. Their eyes were now locked onto him. Would they see him just as the janitor again, or could they grasp these layered complexities? Greg leaned in, curiosity flickering where there had once been derision. "Go on," he conceded, an invitation hanging in the air that gave Charlie hope, imbuing his voice with renewed strength. Charlie laid out a plan he had mentally composed over sleepless nights. Competitive analysis, cost-cutting strategies, engaging employees at all levels to foster a united front. As he spoke, the nervousness fell away, replaced by a clarity that only flourished through adversity. Invest in morale. For every dollar you save in operating costs, invest in team initiatives, and you'll see productivity spike. It's proven, he asserted, his eyes narrowing on Greg as if trying to pierce the wall of disbelief. Make the staff feel valued, they'll fight harder for the company's success. Greg's eyes flickered with a mix of contemplation and hesitation. The shift was palpable. Charlie leaned into it. Driven by the recognition that each data point he was presenting was more than numbers, it was a lifeline for everyone involved. Creating a transparent decision-making process can turn this company around. We're at a crossroads where leadership needs to trust the people working in the trenches. The silence returned as Greg considered the implications, his brows drawn, shadowed by an internal struggle. What if he could be wrong? What if Charlie, an insignificant janitor, held the key to salvation? The air buzzed with anticipation, each pulse between them amplifying the evolving dynamic. Charlie stood at the edge of a chasm, ready to leap into the unknown. Would Greg accept this partnership or dismiss him again, casting him back into obscurity? It was in this moment, as the stakes climbed higher, that Charlie recognized something monumental. He wasn't merely presenting a case for better management. He was asserting his place. An epiphany surged within him. This wasn't merely about strategizing. It was about rebuilding a life from the rubble of defeat. Greg shifted, positivity beginning to merge with his skepticism. Let us say I'm intrigued. What is your fallback plan? Charlie's heart raced, but he met the challenge head-on, ignited by the realization that he was no longer a mere bystander in his fate. If this fails, then I will take full responsibility and will step aside. But I refuse to let this team unravel without trying. The truth hung between them, pulsating with tension, daring Greg to step across an invisible line. Uncertainty morphed into a tangential respect, and with it came the potential for a new alliance, a chance at redemption not only for Charlie but for the collapsing entity around them. Consider it a deal, but I'll need proof, Greg replied slowly, the storm in his eyes shifting. Show me what you can do. Prove you're ready to hold the weight. As hope and dread coalesced within Charlie, he felt the ground shift beneath him. He was not merely a janitor anymore. He was a player on the board, a strategist thrust back into the game. But what lay ahead was uncharted. Market pitfalls, layoffs looming, and a workforce teetering on the edge of despair. Could he rally this ship in the storm, or would failure haunt him yet again? Determination steeled within him, but the path would demand every ounce of ingenuity and grit he possessed. The pivotal moment tasted bittersweet. Would the next decision seal his fate, or would it elevate him beyond the confines of his past? The urgency of his next steps stirred uneasily in his gut as Charlie readied himself for the fight of his life. The onset of the following week was marked by a relentless cycle of decisions and frantic calculations. As Charlie dove deeper into the daunting reality of business restructuring, the unfamiliar territory began to feel like both a mountain and a valley. He was oscillating between hope and anxiety, caught in an unremitting battle against the constraints of his previous identity. Every morning, he arrived at the office before dawn. The quiet hum of machinery and the flicker of fluorescent lights were oddly comforting, like the public spectacle of reawakening life. Each day, he crafted spreadsheets and analyses, poring over the inconsistencies in the financial reports that had so long been the downfall of the company. The lack of organization gnawed at him, a wound that needed healing. Yet, for every late hour spent poring over details, he was confronted with his own personal demons. Memories of past failures seeped into his mind like shadows. Could he change someone else's fate when his own had once crumbled around him? What would happen if he failed yet again? But the weight of the team, their hopes, their futures gnawed at him with newfound urgency. During his evenings, running through figures in his head, he recognized a simmering revelation. He was not alone in this. Jessica, the communications director, began to show interest in his restructuring plan. She had witnessed his evolution, the confident cadence of his speech, the spark igniting within him. Her presence offered a glimmer of trust that Charlie was desperately seeking. As they sat together one night in the shadowy glow of the conference room, Charlie presented his plan for a company-wide initiative, a series of workshops aimed at re-engaging employees. We can create a culture of open dialogue. Let's include everyone in the vision, he proposed. If we're going to survive, we need everyone on board, not just the hierarchy. Jessica's brow furrowed in thought. But you know how resistant people are to change. It's going to take more than this pitch to coax them into participating. Her skepticism reflected in her voice. But there was an undercurrent of hope, a flicker of shared dreams that a surge of instinct coursed through him. Then we show them how these changes will make their lives better. Let us start with team leaders. Identify those who are struggling to engage their teams and give them the tools they need. The vision solidified. With each exchange, he felt himself reconnect with the leadership he had once possessed before the downfall of his family's business had rendered him a statistic. Charlie seized on this revelation, a recognition of his own potential that had emerged from the rubble of his past. However, as he continued to weave this tapestry of strategies and workshops, Greg reminded him of the stakes involved. Charlie, you realize that without tangible results, this will all be academic. The board is expecting performance, not just ideas, he remarked during a scheduled update that IT was a warning disguised as a challenge, one that tugged at Charlie's ambition. The fear of inadequacy simmered just below the surface, threatening to unravel the fabric of his newfound resolve. Yet, within that fear lay a profound clarity. He would have to expand his vision beyond the confines of numbers. He needed to cultivate champions among his peers, catalyzing transformation one person at a time. He conjured the image of a bustling office where ideas flowed freely. Charlie felt an inexplicable energy crackling among his colleagues. Perhaps they were capable of greater feats than the resignation they had settled into. There was a tension within him, the difference between security and the unknown. Would he honestly confront the company's struggles without turning back? Would he build a bridge sturdy enough to bear the weight of everyone's hopes? As these thoughts collided, something inside Charlie thrummed louder, a determination to rise above the shadows of an ex-janitor's past. It was time to step into the light, time to embrace the storm brewing on the horizon. Yet with this resolve came an unsettling whisper. Would the tempest yield to the hurricane of his ambitions, or would it unleash a fury that swept him away? Determined to push forward, he wrapped up the evening's meeting with Jessica and left, mind racing with possibilities. His next step awaited, but within the depths of those possibilities lurked the shadows of risk. Would he risk everything again for a future he had yet to define? The following morning, the office felt different. There was a palpable tension that seemed to pulse in the air, an unspoken challenge swirling among the employees, hovering like mist over the mountainside. As Charlie entered, the whispers of uncertainty filtered through the cubicles, echoing the pulse of his own anxiety. He sensed eyes upon him, some skeptical, others hopeful. It was a fragile atmosphere. He had to tread carefully. He cast a quick glance at his reflection in the glass office door, an image he barely recognized, clad in professionally tailored attire that clashed starkly with memories of old work uniforms. That was the person he had been, humble, often overlooked. Yet now, he was straddling the chasm between the man he used to be and who he aspired to become. Settling into his desk, Charlie turned on his computer. The spreadsheet glowed back at him, administrative data that had warped into a confusing labyrinth over the past few months. He was beginning to decipher its complexity, discovering patterns that had eluded him before. Faced with a decision, he chose to focus on the employee engagement workshops, convinced that fostering an inclusive environment was not just strategic necessity, but a moral imperative. Jessica joined him, her expression revealing a mix of determination and curiosity. Have you thought more about how to execute the first workshop? If we're going to win over the skeptics, we need a solid plan. Charlie met her gaze, and in that moment, he felt a surge of confidence. Let us hold a preliminary meeting with team leaders. If we can show them the positive impacts firsthand, they can pitch it to their teams. We need the change to spread organically. As they brainstormed, Charlie found clarity in collaboration. Ideas flowed between them like electricity. He felt the energy feeding his resolve. They crafted a strategy that broke down the walls around the stagnant communication that had plagued their workplace. However, reminders of Greg's words were never far from his mind. Ideas needed to transform into action, and soon, the following days rolled into each other as they scheduled meetings and presentations, pitching the concept to the leadership team. With alacrity, the feedback was overwhelmingly supportive, yet still, a gnawing fear lingered in the back of Charlie's mind. What would happen once he returned to the floor and had to actually implement this plan? Would they embrace his vision or stifle it under skepticism? On a Friday afternoon, Charlie set his sights on a decisive meeting with Greg and the board. He had meticulously prepared, laying out the positive projections and benefits, ready to prove that his strategies were not just theoretical, but a path forward. But before he could even speak, Greg's penetrating gaze fell upon him. "Charlie," Greg began, his tone drenched in scrutiny. "Tell us how you're going to turn these ideas into measurable results. We've seen numerous plans before. We need proof." The room fell silent. Sweat beaded on Charlie's brow. He felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him, as if the very air had conspired to stifle him. But within that moment of pressure, something ignited inside him. "Success isn't just numbers on a page, Greg," Charlie countered, feeling the fire of passion burning through his hesitation. "It's about cultivating a culture where people feel empowered. Change begets performance. Nurture the team, and you'll see the results." His voice steadied as he spoke, fueled by an urgency that had now transformed into clarity. The board's expressions were a mix of surprise and interest, prompting a shift in the atmosphere that Charlie had craved. Perhaps they were willing to listen, to consider the human element behind the statistics. Yet, as he concluded his pitch, Greg's skeptical demeanor returned, eyes narrowing. "Talk is cheap, Charlie. What is your backup plan if things don't go as hoped? You need to be more than an idealist in this role." Charlie felt the ground shift beneath him, the weight of expectation colliding with his aspirations. He stood at the crossroads of possibility, knowing that his next choices would shape not only his career but the lives of those around him. The silence echoed, thick with anticipation. Could he foster the environment he envisioned? Could he change the course of the ship before it went under? As he prepared to defend his ideas, an affirmative force surged within him. The moment to confront reality, to decide if he could truly embrace this challenge, had arrived. And as he fashioned a response, the tumultuous question echoed in his mind. What would it take to convert belief into action before time ran out? Charlie took a breath, the weight of the boardroom pressing down on him like a lead blanket. The thoughts raced through his mind, half-formed ideas colliding with the reality of the moment. Greg's skepticism loomed over him, a stark reminder of how writing off ideas as merely dreams without a roadmap could extinguish anything innovative. "Backup plans are critical, Greg," he began, invoking a newfound steadiness in his voice. "But let us also explore a scenario where we reframe our approach and focus on collaboration rather than hierarchy." The murmurs of interest in the room hung like a tantalizing mist. Leaning into the shift, Charlie pressed further. "We can start small, a pilot workshop with volunteers across departments. Measure feedback not just quantitatively but qualitatively. Engage employees in shaping directions that matter to them." He paused, gauging their reactions. He could see some heads nodding. Even a hint of intrigue had carved its way into Greg's expression. "It'll be a living, breathing experiment. We'll iterate as we go." It wouldn't just provide a safety net, but also harness the raw energy that's been stifled, the kind of energy that can transform how we think of success. Charlie felt a wave of adrenaline course through him, the mixture of fear and determination fanning the flames of his resolve. He was forging a path not entirely his own, but one that echoed the desires of the team he yearned to uplift. "Imagine if we engaged them wholly," he continued, emboldened. "We start by emphasizing strengths, instead of focusing purely on weaknesses. Empowering individuals allows the entire unit to thrive. We'll enlist their creativity, trial new ideas, and incorporate their feedback into our overall strategic framework." The board regarded him silently, expressions a tapestry of contemplation. The initial skepticism began to dissolve, giving way to the possibility of something larger than the numbers and intricate web of human connection. "Are you suggesting a grassroots approach?" Greg challenged, skepticism partially softened but still present. "How do we ensure that idea doesn't spiral into chaos or remain unmeasured?" Charlie was ready for this. "By laying foundational principles. guidelines for engagement, regular checkpoints with leadership, and a metrics dashboard to track progress, both cultural and performance-related. All hands on deck. Ensuring every voice is heard will reduce the chaotic risk while enhancing collaboration. We become a part of the solution, not just experts observing from afar. A subtle acceptance flickered across the board members' faces as if they saw a light cutting through the dense fog of doubt. Yet Greg wasn't done. But it will take more than a vision and principles to implement change, Charlie. You have to galvanize every level of the company. People are resistant. They fear change. Charlie prepared himself for the challenge, nerve endings alive with the urgency of the moment. I understand that fear, he replied, sincerity threading through his response. I felt it myself. But what drives me is the recognition that without risk, we remain stagnant. If I share my journey, embrace vulnerability, and invite others to do the same, we can catalyze that shift together. With every word, he felt his past, the insecurities, the obstacles molding him into a leader, not just an employee. He could visualize the team responding, not just to him, but to the very culture he wanted to stir. As a ripple of murmurs and nods spread through the room, a lingering uncertainty echoed within him. Would it be enough? Would Greg truly let the ship steer toward uncharted waters? For now, the approval seemed to sway toward him, yet the battle was far from over. Charlie knew that crafting change was one thing. Sustaining it would demand resilience and relentless effort. He sensed the meeting could yield a breakthrough, but also recognized it was merely the first act in a long play. Would the board back him in this new approach, or would dissent splay its unwanted tendrils through the company's culture? The air was thick with anticipation as Charlie's next move loomed, a step forward into chaos or a decision to retreat into comfortable uncertainty. The stakes were higher now. It was a moment that could transform not just his role, but the essence of the workplace itself. What would his next strategic decision be as the tides began to shift? Would he dive deeper into revolutionizing the company culture, or would he falter under the weight of apprehension? The boardroom had begun to morph from a place of anxiety into a canvas of potential. Charlie's heart raced as he recognized the shift occurring around him. It wasn't just his vision anymore. There was a collective consciousness forming, and he felt the stirrings of energy in every nod, murmur, and expression. Yet, with each flicker of hope, a shadow of doubt loomed over his thoughts. What if this interest was nothing more than fleeting? How could he ensure that this moment wasn't just a spark that would fizzle out under pressure? Charlie's instincts kicked in. He mentally charted his next steps. Engaging people was the first part, but true transformation would require a solid framework, one that could withstand inertia. He meticulously crafted a mental list of essentials: workshops, feedback loops, success metrics. First, he addressed the board again. Let us set out our intentions clearly. I suggest we frame our objectives in terms of commitment. What does each department stand to gain from participating? This isn't just a procurement of ideas. It's a pledge to innovate. A few members exchanged glances. He could sense curiosity blossoming. They were starting to see the potential impact each department could have not only on productivity, but paradigm shifts that could redefine their collective identity. But Charlie, one of the senior managers, interjected, a hint of hesitance still in her voice. You say we need commitment. How can we cultivate that in a workforce that's been conditioned to conform? Heat pulsed through him. This wasn't just about him or his aspirations for better company culture. It was about reshaping mindsets. We start small, he replied, controlling the tremor in his voice. In every workshop, I'll personally invite participants to share their stories, their failures, fears, triumphs. When people see vulnerability in their leaders, it removes the veil of perfection. Authentic conversations may encourage others to take the first step. He watched as the faces around the table began to shift, a softening evident in their rigid postures. Charlie could feel the shift beneath the surface, like tectonic plates moving slowly, altering landscapes imperceptibly. Yet his resolve wasn't without its tests. Doubts curled in his mind. What if his approach didn't resonate? In that moment of vulnerability, did he risk exposing his uncertainties too much? He shook off that nagging voice. Embracing vulnerability was part of the journey. Success is a journey, not a destination I'll navigate alongside my peers. We will embrace our setbacks, analyze them, and turn them into stepping stones, he declared, revitalized by the gravity of his words. The room tingled with anticipation. A sense of collective empowerment began to take hold, but he knew that the journey would soon encounter friction. Resistance was bound to rise, inevitably leading him to face individuals who thrived on the status quo. How would he handle intense pushback from team members clinging desperately to their routines? The meeting progressed with a steady cadence, discussions blossoming into enthusiastic debates. As the energy peaked, Charlie felt a renewed sense of agency flowing through him. Each contribution felt significant. The collective energy of the room lifted his spirits, igniting a flame that seemed almost unstoppable. Yet doubts sidled back in, whispering warnings as a familiar figure loomed in Charlie's thoughts. Greg's skeptical nature was likely to resurface. The unwavering anchor of resistance was still unaccounted for, and he could feel the tension circling a storm had not yet fully formed, but its presence was certainly felt. Would this meeting solidify a new legacy, or would it only highlight the rifts that needed bridge building? As the discussions wound down, a sense of looming uncertainty nestled in Charlie's mind. Could he wield the momentum generated today into real, lasting change? As he stood up to signal the end, a sudden thought flickered. Was he truly ready to advocate for this transformation, even if confronting Greg became unavoidable? With every shift in the conversation, a question lingered what awaited him when he stepped into the storm of opposition. The air crackled with tension as Charlie prepared for the next chapter in his fight for transformation. What would happen when the inevitable clash occurred? Would he emerge unscathed or irrevocably altered? The following days were a whirlwind of activity for Charlie. The board meeting had sparked a flame, but now it burned precariously, flickering in the winds of uncertainty. Every interaction felt charged with potential. Each passing moment came with the awareness that Greg's shadow loomed larger, waiting to pounce. Charlie made it his mission to maintain the positive momentum. He meticulously scheduled workshops, gathering small groups, and setting the stage for honest conversations. He drew upon his own experiences to encourage dialogue, relating stories of his own struggles and the lessons he gleaned from them. Yet, as he listened to others share their experiences, he often felt the weight of the atmosphere change as doubts and fears emerged. Emotions flared, stories led to realizations, but could they truly translate into actionable change? He noticed something about himself. He thrived on understanding the complexities of others' emotional landscapes. It deepened his resolve to design each workshop as a safe harbor for vulnerability. Yet, the recurring thought encased him. Could nurturing this vulnerability prove to be a double-edged sword? A part of him grappled with a growing apprehension. As the weeks wove into a tapestry of collective brainstorming, he sensed a divergence forming. Some embraced the conversations wholeheartedly, shifting their mindsets, while others remained entrenched in their habitual routines. In one-on-one discussions, Greg began to express his skepticism more overtly, questioning the utility of vulnerability and connection. Are we really going to trust the workforce to invest their energy into sharing personal stories? Greg's voice was like gravel, abrasive and unyielding. This is a business, not a therapy session. We need metrics, numbers, proof of productivity, not feelings and stories. Each critique hit Charlie like an electric jolt, summoning a mixture of rage and self-doubt. How could Greg not see the value in the mission to foster connection? Could he inadvertently betray his internal values of authenticity? In the midst of this rising tension, an unexpected opportunity knocked. During a coffee break, a young intern named Alice approached him, her eyes alight with enthusiasm. "I loved how you encouraged us to share our stories. It made me feel seen," she said, a tremor of hope manifesting in her voice. Her gratitude reignited a spark within him. Charlie realized that the moments of light emerged amidst the shadows, instilling the belief that change was indeed palpable. What was brewing inside the office was more than mere brainstorming, it was a collective yearning for transformation. Yet, as the power dynamics shifted subtly, something simmered beneath the surface. The forthcoming quarterly review was a critical threshold, and the performance metrics Greg cherished would soon pale against the anecdotes and growth Charlie had tried to cultivate. Each workshop felt more crucial than ever. Every story shared wound tighter around the essence of Charlie's mission. But what if the metrics were deemed unfavorable by the board? Could that unravel the nascent connections he had so fervently nurtured? As the tension mounted, the moment arrived. Greg challenged him to a head-to-head meeting to debate their diverging paths, a metrics-driven strategy versus a people-centric approach. It was clear the battle lines were drawn, and Charlie knew the stakes had never been higher. Facing Greg would be the ultimate test of his newfound resolve. Would he stand firm and advocate for connection, or would the fear of defeat sway him towards compliance? As Charlie gathered his notes, a mixture of anticipation and trepidation coursed through him. It was now or never. Would he finally find his voice against the tide, or would he falter in the face of opposition? The countdown to the confrontation with Greg tightened the air around him, and Charlie felt the rising tide of uncertainty swell. What revelation waited at the end of this clash? The meeting loomed larger in Charlie's mind, a looming storm cloud overhead. He paced in his small office, preparing his thoughts as doubts twisted in his gut. Was he really ready for this? Would he stand unwavering in the face of Greg's relentless pragmatism? Each line of his notes felt more like an anchor pulling him under than a lifebuoy to guide him through the turbulent waters ahead. As the time drew nearer, he replayed the conversations he had fostered during workshops, the glimmers of shared emotions that sparked change. He had seen how connection could energize a drained workforce and transform the dull routine into vivid collaboration. Yet, how could he clearly communicate this when Greg continued to wield metrics like daggers? Charlie took a deep breath. I am not here to defend myself or my approach. I am here to present evidence that what truly drives productivity isn't just numbers on a screen. Stimulating his own resolve, he mentally rehearsed how to argue for the emotional engagement of the employees that could ultimately affect the company's bottom line. As he entered the sleek conference room, he was taken aback by its cold sophistication. A glass table shone under bright fluorescent lights, surrounding him with faces that mirrored the board's indifference. At the far end sat Greg, a poised figure of corporate authority. The tension in the room felt like brittle glass, ready to shatter. Charlie, Greg began, his tone sardonic. Have you prepared any figures to support your soft approach? His smirk bit into Charlie, challenges dripping like honey from Greg's words. The disapproval from the board members seated around him weighed heavily, making Charlie acutely aware of how many eyes were trained on him. With a steadying breath, Charlie focused inward, remembering how Alice had validated his work. His heart took flight on a wave of conviction as he began his narrative, weaving anecdotes of transformation, the measurable growth in enthusiasm within his workshops. He emphasized how motivation and emotional fulfillment would directly translate into tangible results. As his words gathered momentum, Charlie glimpsed flickers of interest around the table. Greg's eyes narrowed, refusing to give any ground, but Charlie pressed on. If we foster an environment where employees feel heard and valued, they will become our strongest advocates, our most creative problem solvers. Discomfort rippled across the room as he made his appeal. You want metrics simply to avoid discomfort, Greg. But isn't it our job to embrace the discomfort to go deeper into what our employees really need? By opening up, they will not just share stories, they will share solutions. In that charged moment, Charlie locked eyes with Greg, a wave of determination flooding his veins. He sensed the defining line being drawn, feeling his heart race in response. Would Greg's brutal skepticism drown out the fervor of insight? But then, Greg interjected. What results have you tracked, Charlie? None of this is quantifiable. Stories don't pay the bills. Heart racing, Charlie weighed his response. The challenge wasn't just about prioritizing metrics. It was a battleground for values. Was he truly prepared to put the emotional landscape of the workplace above the cold calculations valued by some? As the intensity of the moment ratcheted higher, an unexpected thought sparked in Charlie's mind. Were these insights he had nurtured indeed tangible? Just then, Alice's voice echoed in his memory, urging him onward. It was as if she stood beside him, whispering encouragement. They were more than just stories. They were pathways toward a more profound connection, not just within the walls of this meeting room, but throughout the entire company. Charlie steadied himself, inching toward a resolution that could either summon triumph or topple his efforts. Uncertainty coiled tightly within him, yet this was nothing new. He had to push through the discomfort. This moment was a reckoning. Would he solidify the truth of human connection amidst cold skepticism, or would he retreat into silence? His gaze darted between faces steeped in doubt and skepticism. The stage was set, and he had just made the first move. What repercussions would this clash bring? As the room filled with pulsating tension, he was acutely aware this battle had only begun. In the aftermath of their heated exchange, Charlie felt a peculiar calm settle within him. He had stared down his doubts and emerged stronger, like a phoenix rising from ashes of uncertainty. The boardroom's attention hung tenuously, and he seized the moment with tenacity, his mind racing with possibilities. "Let us dig deeper," he urged, confidence infusing his voice. "What if we outlined our collective goals? Let us unite metrics and human stories, creating a synergy that drives productivity and satisfaction." He could see intrigued brows beginning to furrow, resistance slowly melting. Charlie's heart raced. This was not merely about survival. It was laying the groundwork for revitalizing a culture in dire need of nourishment. As the discourse unfolded, Charlie painted not just an idyllic landscape, but a realistic one. "We can implement a balanced scorecard approach, merging qualitative success metrics with traditional quantitative analysis. Employee engagement scores could correlate with productivity rates and retention metrics, illuminating a holistic view of our workforce dynamics." Each point he made forged stronger connections, uniting the empirical and the emotional, providing a framework robust enough to meet Greg's skepticism. The hours in the boardroom passed like an eternity, but slowly, Charlie noted the shift occurring. Faces around him turned from mere spectators to potential allies, acknowledging the proposition that had ignited the conversation. Through anecdotes, he wove compelling narratives of those in his workshop, stories that illuminated growth, potential, and the promise of a brighter tomorrow. "Imagine engaging every employee, catalyzing their unique contributions," he asserted passionately. "We can establish small working groups to tackle problems, identify inefficiencies, and drive transformation from within." The shimmer of approval began to glisten, illuminating the formerly clouded air of skepticism. Greg countered cautiously. "But this needs to produce results quickly. Our survival hangs in the balance." And here lay the crux of opportunity. Charlie prepared himself, knowing full well that true change often began decisively, but its full bloom often took longer to unfold. Transitioning a workforce takes time, Greg, but initiating change is wholly within our grasp. We can start immediately by implementing feedback loops, soliciting thoughts, and measuring their outcomes. Let us pilot this with an upcoming quarter and analyze its effectiveness together. As he leaned into his resolution, Charlie sensed the naysayers shifting. There was a sense of cohesion forming, a collective realization that a new direction was indeed worthy. He could see the hardened expressions softening into contemplation, and in that spectral moment, Charlie felt seen not as the janitor he had been, but as a leader reborn. Weeks later, as the metric dashboards populated with newfound data, Charlie's approach began manifesting tangible results. Participation in workshops surged, engagement scores improved, and even the initially wary emerged as champions of change. Colleagues began sharing their success stories, additional voices contributing to the symphony of transformation Charlie had nurtured. The quarterly review approached, and with it, the impending scrutiny of the board loomed larger than life. Charlie remained undeterred. His strategies had turned from vulnerability to verifiable results. Proof of concept flowed through the data and emotionally charged narratives alike. As he prepared his presentation, he envisioned how far he had come. The leap from janitor to visionary threading through the fibers of the company's culture. On the day of the presentation, he walked into the boardroom full of warmth, clarity, and resolute purpose. Each face around the table conveyed curiosity instead of skepticism. "Today we're excited to present the results of our pilot," he began confidently. "By inviting open dialogues, we've seen a 30% increase in employee engagement and a marked improvement in morale. The qualitative feedback from our teams illuminates a pathway to deeper connections and incredibly innovative solutions." He paused for effect, their eager expressions encouraging him forward. Greg's demeanor shifted, brows furrowed in concentration. "You really believe this is sustainable, Charlie?" A hint of doubt still shadowed his words, but Charlie remained steadfast. "Absolutely. We initiated a culture where stories fuel collaboration and metrics support growth. It's a prolonged journey, the kind that nurtures a legacy. We can't ignore the people behind the progress anymore. The room hummed with energy, the expectancy palpable. When the presentation concluded, applause filled the air like fireworks crossing the threshold of possibility. Charlie felt a warmth envelop him at last. He had not merely altered spreadsheets, but also perceptions and futures. Greg's nod of acknowledgement signified a monumental shift. Months down the line, as success blossomed through a reimagined company culture, Charlie felt a concrete sense of fulfillment. The whispers of his past faded against the roar of his renewed identity, an idea championed, a legacy positioned, and a team fortified with empowerment and trust. What began as an unassuming mop wielder had transformed into a key player of the organization, a rendezvous of purpose and authenticity ingrained within the essence of leadership. The recognition surged like a tide through Charlie's chest. He was at once a leader and a voice for those who felt unheard. Each day, he stepped into the office with a solid confidence he had once thought impossible. This wasn't just a small victory, it was everything he aspired to be. And now, as he gazed into the future, Charlie understood the only boundaries remaining were those he would willingly construct in the pursuit of something even greater. You need to subscribe now to experience more remarkable stories of transformation. This is the moment to show your support. Hit that like button now to fuel the algorithm and keep us rising. Comment below with your reactions and theories about this journey. And don't wait even one more second. Share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to witness this inspiring conclusion.